After watching our first few films, you've learnt about many different forms of abuse. But how do you spot these dangers? What should you be looking for? What are the signs that tell you to take action? Some signs of abuse are obvious. In the story of the crying pregnant woman running in the street, it was clear something was wrong. But often signs of abuse can be hidden or subtle. The most powerful tool we have for noticing hidden abuse is our instincts. Sometimes we see something that just doesn't feel right. That's a feeling worth paying attention to. This young gentleman, he lives within a housing association. He lives on his own. He's got learning difficulties. Because he's considered vulnerable, the neighbours have taken it upon themselves, just to look out for him. They notice that normally this gentleman has visitors who have name badges. They'll say hello. They might stop and say how are things in terms of what's happening on the road. Over the last few weeks, the neighbours notice people coming into his address who wouldn't necessarily be visiting him, younger than him in age. They weren't wearing local authority badges. These people weren't saying hello, they were keeping their heads down. They had hoodies on, baseball caps, unkempt in terms of their dress. One of the neighbours had a gut feeling that something wasn't right, so they felt compelled to notify the local authority in the form of raising a safeguarding alert. We look into it. We find that the property's been taken over by drug dealers. So we contact the police, we contact housing, and through those agencies we get the alleged perpetrators moved on, and he now continues to live there but with extra support coming in just to keep an eye on things. The neighbour in the story uses their instincts to identify danger for the learning disabled man next door. But apart from instincts, there are other signs and indicators that can make it easier to spot abuse. For example, bruising, cuts, burns and other injuries might be a sign of physical abuse, but they could also be due to an accident. So how do we tell the difference? There are parts of the body where accidental injuries occur more often, but injuries in other areas of the body might be a sign of abuse. In the story of the boy in the PE class, it might have been easy for the teacher to assume that the bruise on the boy's arm was accidental, but the location of the bruise on the boy's forearm was a sign that the teacher wisely noticed, signalling the possibility of abuse. But other forms of abuse all have their own possible signs and indicators. Sudden, significant changes in appearance, behaviour or mood might be a sign of abuse. For example, if a normally happy person suddenly seems frequently depressed or angry, a sudden change in finance, debt or spending habits could be a sign of financial abuse. Inappropriately sexualized conduct or conversation, especially in younger people, could be a signal that some form of sexual abuse is going on. If a vulnerable person often seems hungry, cold, unkempt or unclean, this could be a sign of neglect, or in the case of vulnerable adults living alone, self-neglect.
I went to visit a tenant, got to the door and he wouldn't let us in. We then insisted that we took it indoors, which he was very reluctant about, but eventually allowed me to come into his living room. From the point when he opened the door wouldn't open because he had newspapers everywhere. He had bundles and bundles of newspapers everywhere you looked. The place was filthy. His kitchen was dirty. Just no surface to do anything on. It was manky. There was a smell as well. It was pungent. When you walked into his living room, everywhere was covered with stuff. There was boxes, there was newspapers. I saw this open fireplace, which if it was lit with all these newspapers would be a complete health and safety hazard, not just to himself, but he lived in a block as well, a block of flats, which was also a double health and safety issue. So it was obviously a safeguarding issue. So after I left the house, I had a senior manager come out to meet me at the flat, and then we did the referrals to the relevant departments. Social services became involved as well to support him with that side of things. He eventually got moved into another property while his property was cleared up, and then he moved back.
Some signs of abuse are clear where others aren't. That's why it's important for all of us to use our eyes, ears and instincts in order to help vulnerable people who may be at risk. But once you've identified possible abuse, what should you do? Our next film will tell you exactly how to take action when you suspect that someone may be in danger.